Hey, good morning. This is Charlie with 4BZ Truth. I'm coming to you just having something on my mind about my last night's home group. As many of you that listen to my posts may already know, there's certain struggles that I have with the church in general, and it's not necessarily the Bible per se, but it's the interpretation of the Bible and people's tradition that they insert into whatever the scriptures are saying. Now, the thing about see, tradition and doctrine often is rooted in philosophy or their biased perspective. So I just wanted to point out a couple things about the way that the message was presented last night when I was in my home group. And basically we were in Colossians, and it was talking about the church that was planted in Colossae, and they were kind of like all the other early churches. Either the Judaizers were creeping in, or the Gnostics were creeping in to contort or change the message. Now, one of the things that they were pointing out is the Gnostics were first of all, the word Gnostic means know or to know, kind of like science. The word science is knowledge. So to kind of generalize or categorize a Gnostic based on the traditional aspects, I guess you could say they pursued knowledge and made it kind of a point of salvation. They said that you had to achieve some level of knowledge in order to receive salvation. Now, I don't know if that's true per se, but that was the message that was being presented last night. And I didn't necessarily draw that conclusion. I just looked at Gnostics like they were venturing into areas that were things that Christians didn't even want to consider, because they were afraid that because of the early church message that you must defend the faith. So they basically shut out any things that seemed outside of the realm of mainstream Christian or Christianity. And for those of you who actually can relate to my position, I kind of get the feeling that a lot of you are Christians, but or people that are considered spiritual and they don't necessarily follow Jesus. I'm going to continue to go back to this. It's not beating a dead horse. This is my reality. This is Jesus presented wisdom to the world, and he was I put my trust in the scriptures, so to speak, because you have a lot of these different people that were corroborating the perspective that Jesus was a supernatural phenomenon. He was God in flesh or whatever. Now, a lot of the message that I'm getting from other people lately in my research is that you have people that say God actually manifests in everything, and anybody that's willing to allow God to operate through them is actually God. Like they are operating. See, it's like semantics to me, though. I mean, I'm not God, but if I allow God's kingdom to move through me, then I'm operating through God's kingdom. And it just doesn't make any sense to me that, well, I guess in some ways, like the whole message of Jesus, he implemented the Father's agenda, and if we implement the Father's agenda, does that mean we're on par with Jesus? I don't think so. I mean, but again, I'm always thinking about my foundation and how almost impossible it is to remove a foundation from under a house. If you build a structure on a foundation, you literally have to tear it down and rebuild it from the foundation up again. And I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I don't really find that the foundation that I mean, it talks about it in the book of Matthew, chapter 7. It says, the wise man built his house on the foundation of the rock and not the foundation of sand. Because when the foundation of sand was under turbulence and the waves crashed and tore the building down, but the one that was built on the rock withstood the situation. So, this is wise. There's wisdom in the Bible. I mean, some people just completely outright reject it, and our foundation needs to be rooted in something in order to have the proper interpretation. Because you have to have a filter of understanding in order to actually get meaning out of this life, I think. So, but going back to the Gnostics, I feel like there may have been different sects of Gnosticism as well. So to put a blanket statement over all of the Gnostics, it's like saying all of the Christians or all the Muslims, or there's so many different varieties out there. I kind of get the feeling that Gnostics were just kind of more independent. They were always trying to figure things out on their own. And so to blanket statements, some Gnostics, or all Gnostics, it's like saying all science is corrupt. And I don't think all science is corrupt, even though I think a lot of it is. I just feel like, I read the definition of Gnostic last night, and it's to know, and it's approaching information with a esoteric or mystical, understanding. Now, esoteric and mystical just means that there's hidden secret meanings that we find, little patterns in that God basically hid out there for us to find. And to some degree, I feel like it's difficult for me to dump the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to Gnostics, because you have a big tub of information, and the baby represents the information that you're trying to get out of it, and it's too convoluted, and so you end up just throwing it all out. And but you have to weed through the BS in everything. There's a lot of people that I know that say that draw conclusions. They're like, it's been proven that vaccines do not cause autism or something like that. I was talking to somebody about that, and I've heard the opposite. It's been proven that autism, but there's been no test to prove that on the grand scale. I mean, it seems to me like there's an agenda to promote the vaccine. There's a big pharma agenda or whatever. So to say that the officials or the authority have put out that there is proof or there's been a study, sometimes you have to come at it from a different perspective or a different bias or different filter of understanding. Because if you only take one perspective and say, oh, that's the correct perspective, then it may be like just one-sided, lopsided, and you'll never fully understand. So in light of what I'm referring to, and as far as the Gnostics and Colossians, I think that maybe what they were defending against was probably correct, because knowledge does puff up and people become proud and things in their knowledge, and they end up there's some people that act like they're superior because they have knowledge or they have credentials of knowledge, like a doctorate or a master's degree or something. And people just act like they're superior. So that is an act of being puffed up. But there's other people that have knowledge and they're very humble in their approach. So I think that it's like dumping the baby out with the bathwater when they say, oh, all forms of Gnosticism is heresy. But I get the feeling that there's aspects of, seeking out the depth of this reality and trying to unlock the key, or finding the keys to unlock the mysteries of God. There's a certain fulfillment within that. I don't necessarily think that is required for salvation. And breaking down what salvation actually is, I'm going to leave that for another topic of discussion. But the aspects of finding, and it gets into that discussion about works and stuff like that. Like, I've heard so many people say, oh, you don't have to do works. Works is not part of salvation. But I've heard in the Bible that, faith without works is dead. So you can look at it from both perspectives and you can find a justification for whatever you want. You can find a justification for one way or the other. So I choose to say that kind of take things at face value and try to see it from both perspectives, play devil's advocate a little bit. And I hate that the devil gets credit for that but devil's advocate is just considering other options. And I think that the point of this video, to wrap it up, is that don't dump the baby out with the bathwater. If you've heard the saying, I know I've already said it, but don't act like you have the authoritative knowledge. You seek knowledge and add the pieces to the puzzle, because the more knowledge that you acquire, the bigger the picture, or the bigger the understanding that you might have. So I guess if I'm trying to, relay a message to the group that I was in last night, I don't know if, it's not wrong what they were saying about Gnostics, but it's also not right, I think. Because you can't really put a blanket statement on everything like that, or you can't put a blanket statement on the Gnostics. So, anyways, I'm going to just wrap it up here, because I need to get to work here in a minute. So, all right, I love you guys. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.